If you've watched my videos before, you know that the first half I talk about the movie without any spoilers, and the second half, which is clearly indicated, I do talk spoilers. So for this one, I'm going to try really hard to avoid spoilers, but it is one that, and maybe this is even a spoiler, it's one that doesn't give much of itself away in the trailers. So if you've seen the trailers, you might not really know exactly what the central plot is for this movie. So tread with caution if you're very, very sensitive to spoilers. Maybe go see this one first and then come back. But otherwise, we'll just kind of proceed with caution. So, of course, we're talking about Weapons, which was released in August 2025. It is written and directed by Zach Cregger, and it stars Julia Garner and Josh Brolin. When all but one child from the same class mysteriously vanish on the same night at exactly the same time, a community is left questioning who or what is behind their disappearance. And so this is a horror first and foremost. Zach Cregger also wrote and directed Barbarian, which came out a few years ago, a movie that I personally love. And so it is horror, but it's also very much a mystery, right? So you get this initial premise, and nothing else is really explained. We don't really know if it's supernatural, although we can kind of make that inference, right? But it is very much shrouded in mystery. And going into it, that's kind of the intention, right? Is to solve this like really strange circumstance that happened in this small town. So a lot of the time when watching a movie, the themes or the central message of the movie are pretty apparent. This one, and I might be alone in this, I did not get like one singular message. There was a lot going on in this movie, so I think there was a lot to be inferred. But it doesn't feel as though Zach Cregger went into it with a very specific intention behind it. There are definitely some underlying themes, like parasitism, parasitism, or the act of being a parasite, and things around like control, things around contamination, I suppose. Um, and I think it was meant to be sort of up to the viewer's interpretation, which I really liked in the way that it was done in this movie. There is one theme that I will address more in spoilers, something that Zach Cregger had talked about in interviews. This movie was definitely on par with Barbarian in its execution. It was very well acted, very well put together, very professionally made movie. One of my favorite parts, kind of surprisingly, was the score. The score was so effective and just matched the energy of each scene very well. It was also just like a delight to listen to. So I really appreciated that. There were so many times throughout viewing this where I was just really paying attention to the music. And a lot of the time, horror movie scores can be very similar. They can be somewhat cliche, but this one felt very unique and original, and I really appreciated um, just the music throughout the movie. This movie is told in a series of like point of view vignettes from a handful of different characters, and some of the scenes, some of the vignettes happen in the past, and then some of them happen in the present. So you're really on this journey from a lot of different perspectives, kind of piecing together the overall narrative as the movie unfolds. I think something that I'll be looking out for in Zach Cregger's movies from here on out is this very excellent balance of like fun and horrific. And that is just portrayed so much in Barbarian and this one as well. There's also just some really excellent camera work in this movie. There's one scene where a character is being kind of pursued through a liquor store by another character, and you just see, the perspective. It's Julia Garner's character, and she's walking through this liquor store, and you just see like little shots of the other person kind of peeking out in the corner as she's like moving through. It's difficult to explain, but if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. Just like very well done and very, again, very intentionally done. And so I know I always say that movies could be grosser. I feel like this movie is appropriately gross for the subject matter that goes on throughout it. There are some very effective like fight scenes, some very effective gore, also just some very genuinely frightening imagery that's done just by, like having a static shot with someone walking in a strange way. The makeup on some of the characters and some of the like spooky scenes is really effective too. Um, so this movie is creepy. It definitely creeps me out. It holds tension very effectively, so it uses these moments of like silence to kind of build up the tension. So overall, it's as far as like frights go, it is a wild ride. And there's a lot to love in terms of like the scares in this movie. There are a few dream sequences that are they're okay. I think the horror that happens in the daytime and in the like in reality are much more effective. But I didn't dislike the dream sequences. I just preferred the horror elements that were happening outside of that. So at this point, we'll switch over to spoilers. I know that this has been relatively vague, maybe more vague than my spoiler free sections usually are, but with good reason. So definitely go check this one out, especially if you like to go in blind. I highly recommend it for this one in particular. So, since we've arrived in the spoilers section, we need to talk about Aunt Gladys. And of course, Aunt Gladys is the antagonist in this movie. She does not show up until about halfway through, which was really effective for me, especially, watching this story unfold and really having no clue as to where it was going. I had some guesses about maybe everyone had been like drugged in some way or I don't know. I was, going through some like cult theories with Julia Garner's character. Like I really just like I had all of these guesses, and none of my guesses were witches, which is interesting because earlier in the movie, someone spray paints the word witch on Julia Garner's car, which at this point is foreshadowing, I guess. So they told us kind of from the beginning. So Aunt Gladys is a witch. I mean, it's never explicitly said, but she's got kind of like witchy vibes to her. Excellent costume. She is just so frightening. I was talking with a coworker about this movie, and they said that Aunt Gladys was who they wish Longlegs had been. And I do agree with that. She was much more effective for me personally than Longlegs was. And I adored her overall look, her goofy makeup, her costume. And I appreciated the way that her magic, I guess, worked. And I appreciated too that it wasn't over explained, like where she came from, how her magic works, right? Whether or not she is even the kid's aunt, right? It was just such a great character reveal, and I was so, at this point, I was already so invested. This movie is really effective at just kind of taking you on a ride. Just from the beginning onward, like you're just pulled into this roller coaster where you really don't know what's happening, and then once you do know what's happening, you're just excited to see like what happens. The Gladys reveal is simultaneously happening as my sort of favorite scary moment from the movie, where the principal of Julia Garner's school is put under the like control, right? The weapons control, where Gladys uses her gross little pokey sticks and bleeds all over them, and then gets people to do whatever she wants them to do. Um, And the makeup on this man's face when he is under this spell is so effective, and I loved that it was happening during the day. And I loved that we got the visual of him running full speed at Julia Garner before we got the explanation of like what was going on. Um, that was just, it was so effective and so wild to look at, and simultaneously just like terrifying too, and each separate storyline is just so fascinating to follow and see unfold. I feel like the addict character in this movie was very efficiently portrayed. Also starting to see a reoccurring thing in Zach Cregger movies where he has an unhoused character who kind of like steers the narrative, or like helps the story along, right? You had that in Barbarian as well. And it just makes for like really interesting dynamics. And then you also have this like terrible cop character, um, and their interaction, seeing that from different sides, seeing the dad played by Josh Brolin, one of the kids who went missing, and his, sort of like he has it out for Julia Garner's character initially, but then teams up with her to kind of like figure out what the hell's going on. Um, it's just like it's very efficient storytelling, and I really appreciated that aspect of the way that this movie was done. I think if it was just a straightforward narrative, I wouldn't have had as much fun with it, and I really appreciated. I think it was really effective. It worked really well. So talking about the ending and sort of the reveal of, kind of part of what is revealed is that Aunt Gladys has taken over the home of one of the students in Julia Garner's class, and she has put them into this kind of like suspended control where they're essentially comatose. It seems like they're still kind of present in a way, but she can control them, and they just kind of sit at the dinner table. Um, and the spoiler I was talking about earlier when, mentioning themes was that Zach Cregger had said this was meant to portray being a child of alcoholics and kind of being like parentified and having to be like hyper independent, right? And to take care of your parents, like taking over that caretaker role. Um, and so this really heavy kind of topic and this really heavy experience is portrayed kind of sandwiched in between all of these scenes that are like really ridiculous and over the top. Um, and it's really effective as well. I'm just going to keep saying that over and over again because there's so much about this movie that was very effective. Um, and the final scene where everyone is in the house, right? Julia Garner and Josh Brolin have gotten into the house, and they're fighting with, the other characters. And the kid Alex is running around and essentially outsmarting Gladys, and dodging his parents, unfortunately. And he figures out, he uses this stick in the way that he's seen Gladys do. I also saw an interview where Zach Cregger was saying that this scene takes a lot of inspiration from Danny in The Shining, and you can definitely feel that kind of like ingenuity, like survival response. And that leads to my absolute favorite scene in the whole movie. And that is, of course, the chase scene at the very end. So, of course, it's revealed that all the kids are in the basement of Alex's house, and that Gladys is kind of feeding on them or like using them to like regain her youth or her health or something. But once Alex breaks this spell, they turn against her. And so you get this amazing chase sequence where these kids are chasing her through like all the houses in the neighborhood, like breaking glass, jumping over tables, knocking shit around. It's just wild. And it culminates in all of these kids, all 17 of them, just ripping her to pieces. And it's delightfully gory and just insanity. It's so wild, and that, I mean, it made the whole movie. It was such a good ending. I found it very satisfying in the grossest way possible. And then the tone kind of shifts a little bit, and you have the narrator sort of re-explain that they Alex's parents never returned to normal, but some of the kids did. And it feels very kind of I don't know about rushed, but it's like all right, buttoned up. The movie's over now. Which was fine. I'll take it if it means that I get to have the final chase scene. So yeah, I don't know. That was it kept you guessing. I did not think it was going to go where it did, but I'm very very glad for what we did get. I rated this one a 4.5 out of 5. It is nearly perfect. I'm not sure what's really holding me back from a full 5 stars. I think it might be missing a little bit of the emotional aspect that I tend to look for in horror movies. But it hits so many marks outside of that. This one feels like one that I'll definitely rewatch in the future, and one that I would recommend maybe to some more seasoned horror fans. It's definitely not a starter horror movie just because it is particularly nasty in certain bits. But it's a lot of fun. And so if you watched Barbarian and you liked that one, I would definitely, definitely recommend you watch this one as well. I would love to hear what you all have to say about weapons. So please drop a comment below. Tell me what you thought. Tell me your favorite scene. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe. Follow me on Instagram, Letterboxd, and TikTok.